Failing bureaucracy tends to hide behind changing nomenclature and feels superior. Now, for some years, I was running, well, I still run a little film company, and I have a Tier 2 sponsorship agreement. And the documentation is about Tier 2, but it has in fact converted now to the skilled workers visa, but it remains effectively the same documentation. The difference between the Tier 2 and the skilled workers visa is, well, it is significant. But what the legislation is now doing is is a sort of sleight of hand where we go back to the demands of the Tier 2, but without the qualification. So the Tier 2 visa was aimed at people with degree status qualifications. And gradually, the threshold for employing somebody at a Tier 2 level got to £30,000. I think it might have even inched beyond that. But in 2020, the whole thing was changed to skilled workers, and the threshold was lowered to, I think, at one point 18,000, then I think £25,000, and it was aimed at recruiting people simply with the equivalent of 3 A levels as a qualification, not degree level, and therefore the salary was accordingly reduced. And more people could come into the UK, and there was a list of businesses which qualified as having a shortage of workers. And of course, what we've seen is a corresponding explosion of migrant workers coming to this country and bringing their dependents. And the monthly cap, which had been on Tier 2, was removed. So all the effort to become a sponsor for Tier 2, which is considerable, by the way, was effectively abolished as well. And but it doesn't break the relationship between the sponsor and the employee, which I realized quite early on was potentially a very abusive relationship. The employee is dependent on that visa, and if they change jobs, they have to apply for a new visa, which could be simply a bureaucratic runaround, but it could also be a point where the person is returned to their country of origin. And it's very stressful. And I don't see why, if you're employing somebody, you should put that person through that level of stress. That level of stress has just intensified. There are plenty of people, but and it's a level of stress incidentally for both the businesses and for the people who are employed. And small businesses, as I say, I don't think will be able to shoulder the burden of the increased red tape plus the need to meet the £35,000 salary for anybody who's coming into this country. And I simply don't think that it's a matter of paying of underpaying a foreign worker in order to get the work done. The increased salary, I suppose, might change that, but as I also pointed out, I've continued teaching most of my life, and the last teaching job I did, I was head of department, and I don't think I was paid 35,000. I was paid under that. So the people who qualify to come into the UK now under the skilled workers scheme will be paid significantly more than I think I have ever been paid for a salaried job, and they will be coming here under the control of their sponsor. If it works well, it's great. It gives one a sense of security. If it works badly and if the relationship sours, it's a form of slavery. It provides astonishing control to the sponsor over the worker. And throughout all this, the idea that Jenrick says that cutting back on the skilled workers sponsorship scheme and increasing that threshold significantly overnight, the idea that this will automatically increase the number of British workers, suitable settled workers, I think is the expression in the documentation, to take the jobs which are currently being done by migrant workers, is cloud cuckoo land. Because one of the requirements, both of the Tier 2 and of the settled workers scheme at the moment, or up until James Cleverly made the announcement, which was based presumably on Robert Jenrick's documentation, up until that point, it was a requirement of any employer taking on a skilled worker, taking on somebody under Tier 2. It was a requirement that they had advertised. I can't remember how long we had to put adverts out, but they had advertised for long enough to ensure and to confirm that there was no suitable skilled worker who was settled in the United Kingdom, who was a United Kingdom national, who had responded to that advert. It was only after that was established. So adverts can be out there and nobody's responding. It doesn't mean anyone is going to respond if you leave the advert longer. So the British workforce is not responding to these adverts. That is why the foreign workforce is engaged. That is why the Tier 2, that is why the skilled worker schemes were put into place to cross the T's, dot the I's, and ensure there was bureaucracy to support skilled migrant workers. This is simply to make it impossible for them to come, is going to leave more vacancies. We've got enough vacancies in our society. We seem to have vacancies running the country.